Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 919. I had the white pieces and started off with d4. He went with d5, and I go with c4, the queen's gambit, and he goes knight f6. This is known as the Marshall defense to the queen's gambit, and it's not very good. There's no way to sugarcoat it. If you play knight f3, it'll transpose back into kind of a normal line, but the way to challenge this is to take. You take right away, and he has to, well, he doesn't have to recapture. I mean, for a while when I was looking at this, I was playing around with the move c6. So you can turn this into a gambit and get some play, but you don't really have enough compensation for the pawn there. Usually the players with the Marshall defense are playing with the aim of taking back. He took back with the queen, and well, this just gives up a tempo right away. He moves the queen back. And it's my turn. I can get an extra pawn in the center. It looks like e4 right away is the move, or I can get a knight out. But anyway, white is just better here. And then the other way of playing, which they often, I see more often, is knight takes d5. And the key move here to remember is knight f3. In this position, you want to stop black from playing e5 and getting some counterplay, and this also leads to a good position for white. You know, a lot of times black will continue with g6, and you can push this e-pawn into the center and kick this knight away. And it's not like a Grinfeld. In a Grinfeld, you would have a knight on c3, and this knight could exchange itself. And then there's ways that black can counterattack that center, even though it looks impressive. But this is not a Grinfeld. When you kick the knight, it has to retreat. It has to go back to f6 or to g6. And so you get a big center with no liabilities and a good position. So sometimes players will play bishop f5 to try and stop you from playing e4. And then a good move here is knight bd2, threatening the fork. So you're gaining a tempo here. He has to respond to that. And if he plays knight f6, that does stop e4, but you can play the move queen b3, another key move. I just wanted to point out these two ideas, knight b to d2 to threaten the fork, and then queen to b3 here. And what the queen is doing is it's looking at this pawn, which has been left undefended, and you know, the bishop might retreat to defend it, or I think queen coming over to c8 is the normal way to play it. And at that point, well, anyway, you've gotten some good development for free, basically, and you can just continue to play on from here. Of course, if he retreats the bishop, then you can even get in that e4 move with the big center. But anyway, that's all okay, and just a little bit better for white. So it's not like this opening is losing off the bat. It's more like why play it when there are better openings? You know, you're just giving white more of an advantage than white should really have out of the opening. So learn to play something else. That's my advice. So the knight kicks the queen goes back. I played knight f3. I could have played e4 right there if I wanted to get that move in, but knight f3 is still a good move. I was still trying to prevent this e5 move with counterplay, and I think that's a good idea in these positions. He goes bishop f5 now, and I just go e3. The chess engine likes queen b3. I could have tried that idea out here. But, well, the way I'm playing keeps a big advantage to white as well. So he goes e6, and I just oppose the bishops. He trades, and then he plays a6. I guess he wants to stop my knight from coming into that square, or maybe he's worried about the check. I'm not sure what he was so worried about. You know, there's an idea to get the rook on the c-file and get pressure on the c-pawn. So maybe he's trying to prevent that. The combination of rook c1 and knight b5 might be annoying. Anyway, he went with castles here. No, he went with a6. I went with castles. And that was another point where I could have played e4. But I didn't really think about it too much until he played bishop d6. And now e4 is a good move, and I went ahead and played it. Instead of bishop d6, he could have maybe taken advantage of my... I was slightly slow here playing e3 instead of e4. He could have taken advantage of that and played c5, and that would put some pressure on this pawn and make it less likely that I'll play e4. Let's see, what do I have in this position? I mean, I can still develop the bishop and put the rook to the c file and do things like that. So I should be fine here. I think I'm still slightly better. But anyway, he went bishop d6. I get an e4 with the tempo. And I was really expecting him to play e5, but he played bishop to b4. All of these moves, though, leave white with an advantage, so there's not too much to say about them. And then I naturally go for this pin. He kicks my bishop. Of course, I was threatening to increase the pressure on that knight with a pawn move. So he naturally wants to unpin, and he goes with g5. But now he's traded one kind of problem for another. Now he's got the problem of a wrecked kingside pawn structure. It's not quite wrecked, but it's weakened. Let's see. He played knight bd7 here. So actually, that's a good move, strengthening his knight and bringing reinforcements to the king side. And then I went with a3. a3 is a slight mistake. It's the first move the chess engine really questions. It thinks I should just play rook a to c1 immediately. There's a little tactic here I didn't notice. So I was thinking I go here, he takes, I take back, and I didn't mind this so much. I thought, well, I could put my rook on the b file then and get pressure against this pawn, and plus I have the c pawn supporting my center. But there's a tactical move that black has here. He has the move knight to c5, taking advantage of the pin. So that's what I didn't see, and that's why this is okay for black. He's gonna round up a pawn, and white is still better actually, even after black gains a pawn, at least according to the chess engine. So that must mean I have pretty good compensation. Well, I can put pressure on the knight immediately and force him back, so I'll gain some tempos, and I've got good development. So I guess that's worth more than a pawn. But anyway, I hadn't intended to give up a pawn like that. But anyway, he retreated his bishop here. Let's see, where did he go back to? He went to e7, and then I played rook a to c1 now. So we're all okay. He played c6, not wanting a sudden attack on that c pawn, I guess. Go rook f d1. And now my queen is defended, so there's no more of this idea. He could have also played that knight c5 move in some of those other positions as well. But now that my queen is defended, it's not on anymore. He castles. I played h3. I wanted to give this bishop a retreat square, and I was thinking maybe of maneuvering my knight around. Let's see. He played knight to h5, and I dropped my bishop back. And he played bishop to f6. So this kind of set off some triggers for me. He's taking away squares from this knight. He put it on the rim, and now he's placing other pieces where the knight ought to be. So I just pushed on with e5, continuing to take squares away. And the bishop could go back to e7, and I kick the knight, and it goes back to g7. But he would end up with a bishop here and a knight here. His pieces have all gone backwards, and they're not looking like they have any great development from those squares. So that would be bad for black as well. So this was not really a blunder. It's just that he doesn't have any really good moves at this point. So I went ahead and kicked the knight. And this basically wins a pawn. And, I immediately went for the pawn. But, well, the chess engine is a little more patient. It would play knight e4 here. And this is a good move. I'll show one line. The chess engine still wants black to try and liberate his position with c5, although this loses a pawn. Let's see, queen e2, queen e7, knight takes c5, knight takes, pawn takes, and it looks like, well, I've got 3 pawns against 2 over here, and then these are kind of in a standoff, but I have the queen and the knight supporting this pawn, so this bishop is going to have trouble developing. And I'll probably be able to round up this pawn. I can take the f-pawn en passant if he tries to push it. Anyway, yeah, it looks like a good position for white, and I've got the 2 centralized rooks. So that's how the chess engine would play. It would play knight e4 immediately rather than what I did. And in fact, for the next few moves, let's see, he went f5 and went queen takes. Yes, and he takes. Yeah, starting from here, it also likes the move knight e4. I eventually play this move. I mean, it's just kind of a natural move, so something you should keep your eye on in positions like this. You've pushed the e-pawn forward. It opens up a square for your knight, and the knight from that square is also looking forward to these squares supported by the advanced e-pawn. So very natural move in these positions, and something you should definitely think about. I was still making sure I got my king off the g file here, so there weren't any sudden accidents. Although with the knight covering the g5 square, it's not likely that black can really come up with anything here. But anyway, I rushed to get my king off the g file. He went knight to f8, bringing his knight around. I played rook to g1, played queen to e7, and now I finally play knight e4. So any one of those last three moves, I could have played knight e4, and it probably would have been a better move than what I played. But, well, I didn't lose the right to play that move, so it was always there in the position. Let's see, he went knight h7 now. He's kind of maneuvering his knight around, trying to get up some defense on the king side here, and maybe some counterattack, as we saw in the game. So I went with knight to h4, harassing his rook here, and he went queen f7. So this is a position that many people asked about in the comments, and you know, the question they asked is very logical. Is this a good move? I mean, it hits the queen, so it's pretty forcing. And he can take here with check. Not there. He can take here with check. So, you know, I do have to worry about that. But it seems this is all good. In fact, I could even just drop my king back here, and he doesn't have any great follow-up. Well, he can grab a pawn over here, but his queen is hanging, so he's got to deal with that first. And I have my knights all poised to jump in. So this turns out to be good for me in every line here, even the simplest line, like if I just block with the rook, which is the kind of move. It's not very good in this position, but it's the kind of move I might play in Blitz, because he can take with check and then move his queen. Say queen back to e7 to get out of trouble. It seems like he's survived all of that, but this is still good for me with a move like rook f1, and I've just got all of my pieces, you know, pointing at his king here, or his king side, and his rook is over in the corner, and his bishop and his knight are somewhat restricted. I guess his knight can come out. That's a piece he has to bring out, but a difficult defense. But there's even stronger moves here. For example, king to g3, a bit of a counterintuitive move, but it puts pressure on the rook. And the queen is under attack. And where can the queen go to actually defend that rook? It only has one move. It could drop back to f8. And then if it does that, queen takes e6 is pretty much fatal. If the king goes here, then you've got this knight mate. It's not just a fork, it's a mate. The king has no squares. So, and what else? I think the chess engine was recommending bringing the knight back to f7 to block the check. But of course you can take with the knight. So anyway, it's all pretty dangerous. Let's see if I can find the best line here. Rook takes f2 was the recommendation, then king g3, then h5, attacking my queen. Yeah, this was the best line that the chess engine came up with for black. So the counterattack on the queen, then I could move my queen. His queen is still hanging, so knight g5, once again attacking my queen. Could move my queen again, and then finally, running out of ideas here, I guess, queen f4 check. This was given as the best line, which just wins the whole rook. So, and the knight is now hanging too. I take it back. He's going to get this back, isn't he? He's going to play their check and pick up the exchange. So we get some material back here. I'll have a rook and two knights, and his bishop will still be pinned after I take back, and his rook is still out of play. So still material up and with the winning attack. So anyway, everything is good for white after that. So knight d6 was a good move there, although that's a lot to calculate. There's a lot going on there, and the way I played is simple, but it keeps a winning advantage. But I did blunder later, so we'll get to that position. But this is just removes a lot of force. But I saw that after those exchanges, I lost the exchange there. But after he takes back the rook, I saw I was getting the exchange back, and also this f pawn was going to be weak. And at this point, I threw in the rook g1 check move. I think this is a good thing to keep in mind. You don't have to move the knight right away if you have a check and you want to get all your pieces into the game. So there's an opportunity to get that knight into the game, or get that rook into the game before you move the knight. So I think that's just good technique. He drops his king back. I play knight to d6. So I do okay in this part. He was, it's always tricky when your opponent has knights. You have to look at all the forks. but I managed to avoid them and push the knight back. But I did lose a pawn there for probably no reason. Well, I got a pawn back, so I'm still keeping a material edge and still keeping a winning advantage. But there were, so I think it's all okay up to this point, I guess is what I'm saying, especially considering that I was in a little bit of time pressure here. But right here is a blunder. Knight f5 is a blunder. I didn't see or didn't pay attention to the fact that my e-pawn is hanging. So knight to f7 is a good move here. It's, you know, I didn't want to play it because I was hoping to get my rook on the second rank there. But I can't do that right away. Even if this move hadn't worked, hadn't had a problem, you know, the move I played, and I played the rook here, his king can come forward. So I'm not forcing his king back in this position with the move knight to f5. So putting the knight on f7 is not a problem because the rook can't go to f7 immediately. It defends this pawn, so he can't take it, and his knight is under attack. After he moves the knight, then you come here with check, and this drives the king back. This is the way to do it. And whether the king goes to h8 or g8, you can still play rook to f7 supported by the knight. So that was the way to play that particular position, and you know, you just got to march that pawn forward step by step and use the knight to chase the king away from his defensive stand. So now we're close to a mate here. If I get the pawn forward here and I get the knight to this square, the rook can be anywhere on this rank. That's a mate. The king has no escape from that. So, so this is getting close to winning there. I mean, getting close to the end of the game. It's winning all along, but knight f5 is not winning. Knight f5 is would lead to a long game because he could just take here. And let's see, what should I play here? King h4 maybe to come up and try and defend the pawn. I'm still better here. The move that black really needs to find to equalize is this move, rook to f8. And I don't know if you want to take a second to look at this, see if you can spot the idea of this move. Pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. The answer is if I take his rook, then he has knight here check, and he gets the rook back. And with just the knights and the king on the board and the king in front of my passed pawn, he actually has a passed pawn over on this side. That's probably pretty drawish. So, but he would have had to find this rook f8 move. Otherwise, the material is even here, but I have a better position in terms of the location of the advanced pawn and my pieces. So I'm still better here. He has to find not only knight takes e5, but rook f8 to equalize there. But he didn't play either of those. He played rook g8. He was playing fast. He was in a little bit of time trouble as well, although not as much as me. And but this just gives up his knight, and I do go on to win the game after this. Let's just step through the rest of the moves. I didn't make any horrible blunders after this. That was the last big mistake. And then we'll get to the final position, which is kind of interesting in a way. So I ended up giving up. Oh, he ended up giving up all his pieces, and I get to this position here, and he stepped back. So it's my move. He just resigned here. But the quickest way to win the game is actually to checkmate with the king, rook, and knight. And he's helped me out by moving his king already to the back rank. So if you want to think about it, see if you can spot the fastest way to finish the game. Pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm giving the answer away now. So it all starts with this move, king e6. I think this is pretty natural. You keep him on the back rank. He only has two moves, and you're threatening rook here mate. So if he goes to the side, he goes to d8, then you move the rook here. And he can't keep going further to the side. He has to go back, and then you checkmate him. So that's the quickest checkmate. If he goes the other direction, then you place the rook on the 7th rank here, so he can't escape on this square. And then he can go either to, well, if he goes back, and then he gets mated. So he has to keep going in this direction, and now the knight comes in. And now the king only has two moves. He can go to the right or the left, and wherever he goes, the rook can go right in front of the king and checkmate it. Here, the checkmate with rook and king the king is, the rook defends the knight defends the rook, and the knight also blocks the king's escape square. And when the rook comes here and the king is here, the knight is blocking both escape squares, and my king is defending the rook. So a couple of handy mating patterns for you to remember. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see y'all later. Bye.